Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tuesday, May 9th, 2017 West Covina Planning Commission meeting. Help yourself to an agenda here at the front if you would like one to follow along. Any person wishing to address the Planning Commission on any matter listed on the agenda or on any other matter within our jurisdiction is asked to complete a speaker card. Those are up here on the podium. We're short one commissioner, but she might be showing up, so excuse her tardiness if she walks in. And this evening our pledge will be led by Commissioner Holtz, followed by a moment of silent prayer and meditation, so please rise.
Please stand, face the flag, put your hand on your heart, repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Roll call, please, Jeff.
Commissioner Hing. Commissioner Holtz. Commissioner Jimenez.
Present.
Commissioner Redholz.
Here.
Chairman Castellanos.
Here. Were there any corrections on the minutes that anybody noticed? I didn't see any necessary. I'll make a motion to file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And it looks like we may have a few cards out there, so if you guys would fill them out and hand them over to staff, please. That way we could figure out where to place everybody. We'll begin with anybody wishing to speak on anything not on the agenda. So oral communications, no agenda. Was that one, Jeff, turned in for? No, okay. Got it. Well, I'll read through the description of oral communications not on the agenda, and this is a time when any member of the public may speak to the Commission on any matter within the scope of duties assigned to the Commission related to non-agendized, as I mentioned, or consent calendar items. Other matters included on this agenda may be addressed when that item is under consideration. For all oral communications, I may impose reasonable time limitations, public comments to assure an orderly and timely meeting. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the Planning Commission and staff's ability to respond to public comments at this meeting. Thus, your comments may be agendized for a future meeting or referred to staff. The Commission may ask for questions for clarification if desired at this time. By policy of the Commission, oral communications at this time is limited to a total of 15 minutes. And anyone not afforded the opportunity to speak at this time may do so at the end of the agenda under continuation of oral communications. And with that disclosure, I still don't think I have any takers, so we'll move on to public hearings. Number 2 on the agenda is for administrative use permit number 17-07. The applicant is Javier Garcia, and this will be presented by Renee Aguilar.
Good evening, Chairman and fellow Commissioners. Tonight I will be presenting administrative use permit number 17-07 for the subject property on 539 North Azusa Avenue. The applicant is requesting the use of a mixed martial arts studio in an existing tenant space zoned as service commercial under the municipal code under all zones. Schools, including recreational schools such as dancing, martial arts, art, and similar type uses, require the review and approval of an administrative use permit. Therefore, the applicant is requesting an administrative use permit for the proposed mixed martial arts studio called Champions Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Fitness Academy. An administrative use permit is a discretionary review that is done administratively within a required 10-day public review period through public notification and shall meet the required findings. through public request or through the discretion of the planning director, the application may be forwarded to Planning Commission. The applicant's request for a mixed martial arts studio has been forwarded by a public hearing request received on March 16th, 2017. The subject property is located in an existing commercial area on Azusa Avenue between East Puente Avenue and Roland Avenue, and I provided an aerial view behind me. The proposed occupancy has a total of 22 individuals, 20 students, and 2 being instructors. Therefore, the parking is 11 parking spaces required. Historically, the ratio for uses within the plaza is 1 parking space for 250 square feet of floor area. That's the retail parking requirement. The existing tenant space is 5,000 square feet in area and is designated 20 parking spaces. As well, that is the based on parking requirement as well. This number of parking spaces continues to be available to the tenants within the building. Parking for the proposed mixed martial arts studio is calculated at 1 space per 2 employees and 1 space per 2 adult students. The applicant indicated that the mixed martial arts studio will consist of a maximum of 2 employees and a maximum of 20 students present within the space at any one time. As I mentioned earlier, based on the maximum of 22 individuals on the proposed and existing use, a total of 11 parking spaces is required. The plaza currently provides 264 parking spaces, and the uses in the center require 255. Therefore, there is sufficient parking for the proposed use. And behind me is a site plan. So here we have the vacant, the proposed tenant space. And then the public hearing request we have received is from the lab, and that is right here. Okay, so the proposed mixed martial arts studio will provide mixed martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and officer combative training. The school will operate only on weekdays from Monday through Thursday. I am aware that the staff report indicates Monday through Saturday. However, the applicant has decided to change that to Monday from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and will reopen from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. The students will train 2 specific days a week. The morning classes are designed for and exclusively only to law enforcement, such as LAPD, deputy sheriffs, correctional, probation, and federal agents. The classes from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. will be for kids jiu-jitsu, and the classes from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. will be for adult jiu-jitsu and adult boxing. Again, I want to clarify that there will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will be closed. Here's the floor plan. As for the conclusion, AUP forwarded to Planning Commission was directed by the public hearing. The proposed mixed martial arts will be called Champions Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Fitness Academy, and it meets parking requirements. Therefore, staff recommends Planning Commission to adopt resolution to approve administrative use permit 17-07. That concludes staff presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions by Planning Commission.
Thank you, Renee.
Perhaps I
ahead,
should
Jeff.
clarify a couple of things. This was an administrative use permit, so it can normally be approved administratively at staff level, but there was a request for hearing received, so that's why it's before you tonight. As Renee said, we had originally reviewed it under the original application, which talked about being opened basically 6 days a week. And so the conditions of approval are before you in that manner. They have since changed that and are contemplating being open 4 days a week, it might be wise to allow some flexibility to allow them to be open on a Friday or a Saturday, if they so choose to do that sometime in the future. So it may be in our best interest, in their best interest, in the city's best interest, to continue to allow the conditions of approval to allow them to remain open during that time frame, even though they're not intending to use it at this point in time. So that's staff's thoughts at this point in time.
Otherwise, we would just have to come back and reopen it if we limit it, right?
That's correct. If you limit, if the commission tonight decides to limit their hours of operation from Monday through Thursday, and then a year from now they want to be open on Fridays, they'd have to come back before the commission to request that, yes.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Do we have any, Commissioner Jimenez, please?
So just to clarify, we would leave condition F alone, or as is, or some sort of hybrid?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? None. Thank you. I've got a couple cards here that are not completely filled out. I've got Michelle O'Reilly. Was that for or against? Yeah, I just want to put them in order. For. Okay. Okay. And John Kavegian, same question, for or against? Just let me know real quick, for or against? I am for. You're for, okay, no problem. Thank you. Oh, and number 2, okay, cool. All right, and is the applicant present to come up? Please come up, sir. One second, sir, and I just turned on your mic. Thank you, Ron. And you're Mr. Javier Garcia?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome. Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, I'm here requesting an administrative use permit. I also went over the staff report, and I agree with Mr.
A little closer to the mic, please.
Okay.
There we go.
And I agree with Mr. Anderson. If there is a little bit of flexibility, I didn't really think about that. If later down the road, we would want to open other days. Therefore, I agree with Mr. Anderson that if you guys allow a little bit of flexibility for possibly be open on a Saturday or a weekend. As far as the parking spaces, because I did receive notice of why we are here today, and I would just like to touch a little bit on each subject. One, which is the parking space. There has been a staff, according to the staff report, there is enough parking. Also, on our peak hours of operation, some of the businesses that are in the plaza are actually closed. For example, Aim Higher, they close, I believe, at 4:30, Monday through Friday. So that would vacate an additional 23 parking spaces while we are operating. State Farm closes at 6 p.m. Once again, that's during our peak hours. They would be vacating. There would be an additional 8.8 parking spaces available. The Carpet District, they close at 6 p.m. Once again, during our peak hours, that would be 14 additional parking spaces available. And the Frazee Paint closes at 7 p.m., and that's an additional 20.16 parking spaces available. So in regards to the parking, we do not only meet the requirement spaces, but during the hours that we are open, a lot of the business in the plaza are empty. Therefore, having a lot more parking available. Another matter that I wanted to touch on that I see, one of the things that we're also here for is the noise complaint. We don't use mics. We don't use loud music. We're a mixed martial arts studio where we focus a lot on discipline with the children and the adults. Therefore, we're not playing any loud music because our students do need to hear instruction. Our main primary focus is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My background is in Jiu-Jitsu and boxing. I boxed for about 14 years. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've been practicing the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 8 years. My brother for about 10. And in Jiu-Jitsu, it's a lot of instruction. So therefore, having loud noises would definitely conflict with us instructing our children at the academy. Mr. Bruce Frausto wasn't able to attend today's hearing because he has his shop, which is Hollywood Mattress, which is right next to the proposed location, but he did write a letter. I'm going to go ahead and read the letter and therefore provide it so you guys could see. To whom it may concern, my name is Bruce Frausto, and I am the direct neighbor of Two Champions at 539 North Azusa Avenue in West Covina. Since they have come in, they have not been a nuisance as far as parking or noise in the area. Their clients have been well-mannered and well-tempered. They have overall been a joy to have next to me, and I hope they manage to stay there for the years to come. If you have any questions, feel free to call me, and he provides his phone number. Also, we have a letter from Michelle O'Reilly. She is the director from Aim Higher, but I won't read the letter because she's actually here today, so she will get a chance to speak. Now, I know one of the concerns for the lab is their parking, is parking spaces. One of the reasons why personally I feel parking spaces is an issue for them is because they usually practice outdoors. They take their classes from inside their studio to out in the parking spaces. Now, maybe they feel that we're going to be taking their practice space by being at the proposed location, but what can I say? They're parking spaces. They're not designed for dancing or any sort of extracurricular activities. As far as that, I do have some pictures here that does show it clearly shows them practicing their dance moves and holding their classes outdoors. Also on Sunday, and there's timestamps, I don't think they came out, but I do have them on my phone. On Sunday, I had one of my students around 11:30 give me a call because he thought something was going on. So I drove there, and at 11:30 this Sunday, there were actually like 30 to 40 kids outside making a lot of noise, dancing, doing their thing. So if that's one of their concerns, that we're going to be taking up parking space to avoid, that would keep them from further practicing outside, it's not my intention to disrupt what it is they're doing. As a business, like I said, all we're going to be using are parking spaces for the clients to be there and train. I know another reason, and the final thing that I want to touch on is direct competition. I know that's one of their concerns. They are primarily a dance studio, barbershop / Muay Thai place. We do offer boxing, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They do not offer boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We do not offer dance. But regardless of that, I don't see how direct competition would be a reason for us not to be granted our administrative use permit. What can I say? America was built on competition, on businesses thriving. And all we're trying to do is bring something very positive to the city of West Covina. We're currently in the city of Covina, but we've outgrown that location, so we're trying to expand to the city of West Covina. And I think we're a good business to have in West Covina. We contribute a lot to the communities. We provide training to deputies, to PD officers, to federal agents, training that will help them in their line of work. We also give back by, helping children in the community. We offer free tutoring. Myself, my passion is mixed martial arts, but I did go to school. I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice at the University of California State, Los Angeles. But I did make the decision to open a mixed martial arts studio because I felt that was my way to give back to the community and help children. Because growing up in Boyle Heights, that's one of the things that helped me. Growing up in the mid-'90s, which was, I was fortunate enough that my dad would put me in mixed martial arts programs. He would put me in boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and if there's a way for me to give back, that's the way, and I have been doing that. Other than that, thank you for your time. I really hope, you guys do grant us our administrative use permit. I think we're a great asset for the city of West Covina, and I plan to stay here for a long time. Thank you once again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Reynolds.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you currently operating?
I'm currently in Covina and in West Covina. I just finished pretty much moving in. But what happened is when I applied for the administrative use permit, I was under the impression that it normally takes about 30 to 60 days, and that under the impression that rarely nobody ever requests a hearing for such a thing. So for the past couple months, I have been paying double rent in Covina and West Covina, which has taken a big toll on me to the point where I'm actually scared to lose my business because I'm just trying to keep up. But I'm in transition right now.
Okay, no, Mike, so have the doors been open and doing business?
Not for new customers, just for existing customers. They come and.
Okay, so the answer is yes?
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay, because the guy from Hollywood Mattress indicates that you're not a problem.
Yes, sir, you're correct.
Which would mean that
yes, sir.
You're operating from the way I read it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, I mean, that's.
It wasn't my intention, but like I said, I've been waiting on this for the past 60, almost close to 90 days. I guess the timing just didn't fit. And like I said, I'm at the point where it's borderline, like I'm losing a lot of money from paying at 2 locations. Total rent combined, it's close to $10,000 at both locations monthly.
So are you still operating in Covina or no?
No, I couldn't keep it open any longer. The landlord in Covina, he has a new tenant coming in, and I'm not the type of individual to stay there and, take advantage of anybody. I didn't want to do that to him. He's been a good landlord, and that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so how long have you been at 539?
Full time, about a month.
About a month?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you've already got signage in place on the roof, sign and?
Yes, everything is ready to operate, sir. Everything's been ready to operate. But like I said, I've just been waiting for my permit.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And once again, I do apologize for that. But like I said, I'm at the point where it's either I completely tell my landlord in Covina, I'm sorry, I can't pay, I'm just going to stay here, when he's been nothing but kind to me, and it's not like me to do that.
One other question, the square footage here is what, 5,000?
Yes, sir.
What is the square footage in Covina, where you're
It's
currently?
2,200.
So this is more than double that?
Yes, definitely. Okay. And we're a new business. We were in Covina for 2 years. During those 2 years, we complied with everything the city asked us to comply with. We've been good to the city of Covina, and we never had any complaints. Yeah.
What kind of businesses were near you in Covina? What type of?
There was a Pollo Loco, a Chuck E. Cheese, a 99-cent store, a Big Five, a lot of businesses. It was a very, very busy shopping center.
You out there, what street are you on over there?
Azusa as well.
Oh, it's on Azusa.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a few blocks up.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Commissioner Jimenez?
I believe it would be the same shopping center that's at the corner of San Bernardino and Azusa, I believe, that larger one where the O'Reillys, behind the
Yes, correct,
O'Reillys.
correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes, that is it.
Each class is typically, it appears 1 hour based on the operation
Yes.
chart that you're providing with
Yes.
us. Is it customary after someone is done with their 1-hour session, they get in their car and they call it a day and then they move on?
Yes, pretty much. The class is over, it's time to go.
And 1 hour is typically what
Yes,
you're going to do?
1 hour, it's how it is. A quick breakdown of the class, for example, for our children, the first 5 minutes of the class, we go over the word of the day. They do get a homework packet every month. We go over the word of the day. After that, about the next 20 minutes, it's conditioning. The next 5 minutes, stretching and break. And after that, it's just technique. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions of Mr. Garcia? Thank you for coming up.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I did have a card turned in by Mr. Miguel Herrera. Is it for this agenda item? Yes, sir. For or against? For. Thank you. We'll continue with Ms. Michelle O'Reilly, who the applicant mentioned also has a letter. It's up to you. You could decide up here.
I'm Michelle
Welcome.
O'Reilly. I'm from Aim Higher. I'm the director at Aim Higher. We're a disability day program for adults with special needs, ages 22 and up. My oldest client is about 80-something years old. So they came in actually just to kind of say hello and let us know that they are possibly going to be here. And I just asked, I said, hey, do you guys have any volunteer experiences? Because one of the biggest things at our program is getting our clients with special needs out into our community. I've been running Aim Higher for 2.5 years. That's when we opened it, actually. And I have had businesses shut us down saying, no, I'm sorry, we can't take clients to come help volunteer, even sorting, being a greeter, anything like that, because they say our clients are a liability, or there's just no work that possibly can be done with our clients. And so it's a big kind of struggle for me with community service and volunteering when with our clients with special needs, because we've just been shut down a lot. I've been to all of our neighborhood stores to say hello and ask if we could maybe possibly just come in and help in any way, and a lot of people have turned us down. So I just want to say that, I believe with this martial arts studio is kind of a blessing in disguise for us, because first thing I asked him, I said, here's what our clients do, this is what they would love. Is there anything that we could even come in and just tour around and see? And he was kind of open arms, where our clients have been in there. They help volunteer sometimes to help clean different things or organize different things. And it's just kind of a nice spirited atmosphere where our clients feel excited to be in. And so he toured us around, he showed us different things, and so kind of I'm here to say I think it would be a great enhancement to our little center that we're in, but then also to our community, because I have had so many negative letdowns of, I'm sorry, we can't accept your clients to help in any way, to where he basically said, yeah, bring them in and maybe we could show them around, we could maybe even have a class for them and things like that. And so I would love to continue kind of to build this partnership with our clients, because they've been there a couple times just to see what's going on, and they absolutely love it. So I'm here kind of just to say that I think it would be a good asset for even our program for them to be here. Okay.
Thank you for coming up. Do we have any questions? I don't think so.
Great.
Thank you for sharing. Next card I've got is for Marco Roland. Please come up. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for having me. Hello, my name is Marco. I apologize if I'm not looking at you guys. I'm just going to read off a couple notes I wrote off today. Hello, my name is Marco, and I'm a police officer with the Los Angeles City City of Los Angeles. I'm also a veteran, Army veteran. I come from a single-parent household from East Los Angeles. I grew up with very minimal resources around my area. There wasn't much to do after school but to hang out down the street. Champion Jiu-Jitsu is a place I wish I had available growing up. Not only do these children learn Jiu-Jitsu from Champion Jiu-Jitsu, but have a positive influence. These children are taught leadership skills, discipline, and responsibility. Coach Javier and Coach Gabriel do more than help these children with the Jiu-Jitsu, but also mentor these kids by making sure they're responsible for their academic success. The short amount of time I've been there, I am very impressed how Coach Javier is building a study atmosphere for these children to do their homework. As a police officer, this is paramount because children should have a safe place to do their homework. Not only do they have a designated area for studies, they also help children if they have any questions with their assignments. For instance, there's a kid who his name is John, and he has major aspirations to start competing in Jiu-Jitsu. Coach Gabriel goes through the extra mile to help John reach his goals. This child works hard, and you can see his hunger to thrive in Jiu-Jitsu. Coach Gabriel participates in not only in his training, but also his helping him do his homework, which I have seen several times that I've gone there. Children just as John should should also have the same resources that John has, I should say. Also, these classes help maintain children's health by making sure they attend class and get their exercises. Parents also come with the children who are overweight with the goal to help their children get healthy. Coach Haver and Coach Gabriel help these children be comfortable in an environment to lose weight by installing. This is not only an individual success, but also a team effort. I don't have children of my own, but I'm hopeful to have children be a part of their community by having role models who not only teach them jiu-jitsu, but also generally care for them like Coach Javier and Coach Gabriel. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming up. Do we have any questions? None at all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for
Commissioners.
coming up.
Oh, thank you.
Next speaker card I've got in favor is by Brandon Paulus. Welcome.
Hi there. I didn't really intend to speak, but they gave me a card, so here I am. I've been training at Champions for 9-10 months now, my girlfriend and I, and it's a great gym. It's family-oriented. The coaches are warm-hearted and kind. I've gotten in shape, made a lot of friends, and it's just a positive, good place in the community. And don't take it away from us. That's it.
I have a question.
We've got a question.
You've been training for 9 or 10 months
The other location.
at Covina?
Yeah.
Have you been to this one?
No.
Not this one, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for coming up. Next card we've got is Miguel Herrera. Welcome.
Hello, good evening. Like I said, my name is Miguel Herrera. I've been training at Champions for about 6 months now. I'm also a police officer with the city of LA. Champions is, awesome location. I have nothing but good things to say about the coaches and the facility. I've been, like I said, I've been a police officer for almost 11 years. After the police academy, they kind of, self-defense is on your own, so, as well as fitness. And, I found all that stuff here at Champions. Like I said, nothing but good things to say about them.
Good. Well, thank you for coming up. The last speaker card I've got for is by John Kavejian. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Kavajian, owner and operator of Carpet District for the last 20 years almost. Matter of fact, I just finished the lobby, installing the carpet for the city, and I just finished the police department too, doing a great job in the city. My dad taught me when I was a kid, when you grow up, The only thing I can advise you, love your neighbors. And I do love my neighbors. Matter of fact, when this gentleman, they came in and introduced themselves, we welcomed them. And tonight, here I stand before you. I urge you to grant a license to these poor guys. Thank you. I have no further, if you have any questions.
Any questions? None at all. Thank you for coming up. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that might almost exhaust the audience. Anybody else for this proposal? And we'll move on to the card against by Ms. Valerie Ramirez. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, basically, I first would like to say I support and I'm pro champions doing what they do for the community, for the children, for the adults, for whomever it is. It sounds like it is a great business and a great program. I just want to make it clear that at the lab, we have a very similar mission. We are here to serve the youth and the community and do good for our neighbors and everybody else around us. So my complaint certainly isn't within their services. And I personally couldn't even speak on their services because I've never seen their business operate. So for me personally, my biggest concern is the parking. I know he had pictures suggesting that that's where we hold our classes, which is ridiculous. We have a 10,000 square foot building. We don't have any need to hold our classes outside on concrete without mirrors or covering. It wouldn't make sense. There's not even music out there. The pictures may suggest we do direct and operate the West Covina High School hip hop team, who we are home to, and so there are several rehearsals where there are a lot of kids that are encouraged to make sure they're proactive with their time and making sure they continue their practices. And, you know, that's suggested that they do it at home, but if they want to do that, I'm not their personal babysitter where I go follow them once they leave my classes to see where they are rehearsing. So a lot of times they're waiting outside for their parents to get picked up, and they do practice. We tell them, you know, make sure you're in a safe. We tell them to pull it in. And that may be what he has pictures of or what that suggests. But to clear that up, that's typically what I would think he's referring to. But a structured classroom would never, ever be acceptable to us to ever hold or host outside. That's just not even something that I think even a parent would drop their kid off to do. My concern is the parking, because it's been an issue prior to them coming in. And I think with his suggestion of when businesses close or not, all those businesses that he did mention are further down closer to norms, and we do provide a ton of classes for the youth, and they're new drivers, so they're younger, and we've had several complaints about them saying how far they have to park just to be able to get parking, and it does get really dark, and, you know, quite frankly, there's a lot of homeless, and it can be a little bit scary at night, or sometimes we've had some issues where we have had to call the police because of the issues of the neighborhood. And so them being able to have a safe, secure parking spot right where it's designated is a concern of mine, and it's been a concern that the parents have been complaining to about, you know, my kid had to park all the way down by the restaurant. Why is there never any parking here? And so a business coming in that's half the size of us, probably requiring very similar parking slots, and they're operating the same exact times that we are in our prime, where we do have a heavy traffic flow, is really my biggest concern. And I just, you know, just want to make sure it is still a safe environment that people feel when they come to. It's not just a stressful, frustrating thing for them to be able to get in, get a parking spot, and get into their class on time. And make sure they can do that within the area, you know, that where they're attending, and it's not something that's, you know, super down the street for them to have to be able to park at. And the competing services, I mean, we're both in a line of work where it suggests competition. So that's not necessarily my main concern here. Though it's an issue, of course, you know, we don't love the idea that we offer mixed martial arts, and they do as well. But, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, safety is my first and foremost concern. And then secondly, yes, it is a little frustrating that the landlord even allowed us to have two of the same services right next door to each other. But I mean, that for me is probably more of a personal frustration, because we have struggled with that location and being able to even get any kind of proper signage there to be able to promote our business and get it to where it is. I mean, we've been serving in this community for over 10 years, and we've been able to do some really great things with our youth in the community. And it's been a struggle, though. It hasn't been easy, and it's been been something that we've really had to use our resources and stay very focused and committed to make sure that we've stayed afloat and been able to survive being kind of back hidden away. You know, we don't have the signage and the exposure to be able to get those walk-ins, so we rely heavily on what the activities that we participated in to bring in our, you know, our customer flow and having a direct competition. We do have a boxing ring. We do have a very similar gym setup as they do, and you know, it can get probably a little competitive in caddies, seeing how we offer the same services, but beyond that, if we move to the safety of it and the fact that we operate the same exact times, those are just my concerns. And I know it said that there was a proper amount of spaces allotted for both of us, but I find that questionable just because I know that for us to move in, that was even in question for us to make sure that there was enough proper parking spots and for everybody. And it's hard to say that there's going to be a max of 20 students or not. I know that we can all kind of guess at what we're operating with, but if he was at a 2,200 square foot building and he grew out of that, I mean, he maxed out of 20 kids in a class, like that to me is where I'm in question. How can we say that that's the only amount of parking that he's really going to need? Because I've suggested certain amounts for my classes before, and then to my surprise, I've had a great showing or quite the opposite. So to me, that's a hard thing to guess, and I know that there has to be something put down on paper, but I think the reality of the situation is that it can far exceed 20 kids, and when you're dealing with that at the same time, that can be a big traffic issue.
Okay, and we've reached the time limit, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a question from Commissioner Edholz.
Thank you. You mentioned a signage issue. Is that an issue with your landlord, or
Yes.
it's a restriction of that particular center?
I believe it's the agreement he has with Goodwill is next to us, and I believe that's just in the contract of what he's allowed them to use and cut us out of, so I believe that is more of
So
a
there's no way
frustration.
you can get around that?
I've tried for years. I'm
Okay.
going on my 5th year with this lease, and I've fought him every single year on it. And it's frustrating for us because I think that it would make a big difference for us. And you know, now that they have street visibility too,
Yeah.
I feel like that's also kind of, you know, like a little bit of a disadvantage for us.
And I have another question. I was out there yesterday morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that. And there was individuals on your sidewalk with tents. And
Yes.
What is that homeless people? What is that?
It is. It's actually, that's the Goodwill side, and that's what's
Yeah.
super frustrating is that entire side, and sometimes down by State Farm too, it's a complete camp out, and we've actually had to call the police several times because there's
Now,
it's
that's,
pretty inappropriate.
that's
incidents.
private property, is it not? Where they're
sorry?
at? Isn't that private property where they're on
Yeah,
the sidewalk, right?
I believe they say that there's not much they can do. The only thing you can do is if they're, you know, committing some sort of crime or violation, you can report that. But typically, by the time the police get there, they've already kind of, you know, moved on. But we've had pretty severe incidents because ours involve a lot of children, and so my concern was.
And one other,
appropriateness.
your number 2 point was noise, and you didn't address it at all here. Is that not a big deal for you?
You know, I feel like with noise, it would be a concern, but I feel like once I heard him out on what he was saying with it, because I know for our classes, for our MMA classes, we do use music and we do use the radio, and we have several rooms operating at once, so it can get, you know, kind of noisy. And so I wasn't sure if that's how they operated theirs, but if they did, their entrance would be kind of like directly facing where our doors are. And so that was a concern for me, just seeing the property and knowing what types of businesses we are. But he kind of cleared that up, so I didn't feel it was necessary to push.
One last thing, you mentioned that you're competing. I mean, you could coexist with them, right? I mean,
I believe so. I mean, truthfully, I support and I'm proud of other businesses and communities that are trying to do something good for you know, everybody around. Like I am not against that, and so I just would, you know, especially if we are to be neighbors, that wouldn't be something that I would ever allow my students to understand, that there's that type of tension. It really just comes down to safety, and I've been working with kids for over 17 years, and whenever I address anything with the business, it really starts with safety. So for me, that was a big frustration because I know it was already a source of frustration prior to them moving in. So then you add in that and the same type of services, I'm just trying to calculate how it's going to coexist and you know, be something that's not bringing a lot of attention to, you know, the area and the facility because of those problems. Thank you.
What time do you notice is the peak parking for you?
Ours is probably around 6:37. We start our courses the same times as them. It's at 5 o'clock. But typically, because I think a lot of parents are still working, or a lot of our main courses that we get a lot of popular traffic for are around our 7 o'clock hour. So people are usually arriving around 6:30, 6:45, and by the time it hits that 7 o'clock, it feels like it's just kind of chaos. And we have a lot of teams kind of going in and out, so it's just, it's been a little, the traffic side of things has been a little frustrating.
But it's packed even though those other businesses are closed by then?
I think it's packed because of the type of classes and courses we run. Like we offer a bunch of cheer rental services, so that's the cheerleading squad. So you have 30, 40 kids, that are part of that, so that you think of the parents doing that. That's why I said it's really hard to say, and that's just for one of the hours, but we also offer other dance courses at the same time. We have 5 rooms that can operate at once. So we're just trying to say that it was already an issue, and the landlord knew about that personally, so that's why I'm also a little concerned why he didn't address that to them before they were moving in, or even suggest that that could be an issue. But my assumption is that maybe their numbers are a lot lower than what they're expecting, and so maybe it is matching up to the requirements, but is it realistic?
Okay, Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, so the parking spaces are filled up with your people.
I couldn't tell you, I'm not monitoring the parking lots because typically I'm in the dance rooms, but my thought would be that, right in front of our area is typically where our kids and parents like to park, but he's right on the side of us and he doesn't have anything directly in front of him. There's only a sidewalk in front of him. So they're going to use the same spots that have already been used by our facility.
Commissioner Jimenez?
This shopping center, believe it or not, is part of my neighborhood, so I think I know it pretty well. In talking about the lab, what is the percentage, the breakdown? You can just give me a rough number in terms of the breakdown of your use. What is actually hip hop dance, and how much is the MMA component? So if I had to go, if I was interested in taking part in one of your classes, what's the percentage? Do you do more business as hip hop and dance?
I think the funny thing is our facility is broken up to where it's actually split right down the middle, where our facility could service the MMA. It's about half of the building, and the dance is about half. I think the difference of why we focus so heavily on dance is because that's where that's my forte, that's where my experience comes in, and then my father operates the MMA side, and it is more on a recreational thing, whereas our dance programs are competitive, and we do travel with them, and we do have a lot of recognition for our dance programs. So our MMA side of things is known more on just an exercise, it's for exercise and recreation, and so we do offer it a decent amount. It's just and I say it is split half and half. I just think that the exposure of our facility is focused on the dance side because of our success in the community.
So spatially, it's designed to accommodate either use, but in terms of from a practicing standpoint, you do more of the dance with, I'm going to use the word ancillary, MMA.
I just think our dance program is more popular.
Okay. And what sort of MMA discipline do you focus on?
Muay Thai.
Muay Thai? Okay. Did you have to apply for an administrative use permit?
Yes.
Okay. And were there, I take it because we never saw that item, or maybe it occurred before my time.
Yeah.
There was no, did it come before the commission maybe?
Mm-hmm.
It did? Okay. And you're there operating now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? None. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
And would the applicant like to come up and rebut? Welcome again.
Thank you. Okay, you said you were there around 10, you saw a lot of tents. I do agree with that, and I actually did make that a point to the landlord prior to signing the lease, and I'm happy to say that there's now around-the-clock security. Last night I was there in the parking lot, and they were very busy clearing the parking lot out because I did mention to him that was one of my concerns prior to moving in, because I have kids, she has kids, and sometimes I even feel bad for you, like for your business, because somehow they kind of cater towards your side, you know. But yeah, they kind of cater towards her side of the building. But that's something that I'm very excited about, the fact that now there's around-the-clock security. I don't know if she's aware of that, but they are going to be there from now on. So I'm very happy for that. Being the fact that parking was one of the concerns for the lab, what I have been doing for the past 2-3 weeks is actually doing my own parking survey. I've been taking pictures every hour on the hour, timestamp pictures every hour on the hour, just to see more or less like how the parking is. There's also parking on Azusa, where our location is at, because we have visibility through the front. There's a lot of parking space in the front as well. It's always empty, but once again, every day, almost every day, I try to go and take pictures like every hour on the hour, and there's like a lot of pictures here, some that I didn't even print out, and you can see there's a lot of empty spaces. Now, her concern is her teenagers walking from the further end of the parking lot. And I understand how that could be a concern. For my kids, if they're getting dropped off, parents have to sign them in and out. That's the way we've done it since day one. Why? Because even when we were operating Covina, or whether we're operating in West Covina, safety of the children comes first. So I want to make sure that the parents check their children in, check them out. A lot of parents don't stay, so they just drop off their children. And, you know, if that's one of her concerns, I have no problem, like, talking to my students, because in the evening, our student base, they're all adults, okay? In the evening, the kids' classes, they go from 5 to 6. After that, it's all adults. I have no problem letting our adults know to park further down, and they won't have a problem with that. If that accommodates her to feel safer for her teens, I have no problem doing that. And I know I have a really good clientele, like, you know, and I know if I do express to them the concern, they will listen, and they will take the parking spaces further down. But other than that, you know, I actually met her father one day, and very nice man. He actually came in, introduced himself. We talked for a while. We talked about his background, my background. We kind of come from the same area. And he expressed how he was excited to have someone like us, you know, come in. He even went as far as saying that, you know, maybe in the future we could have some of his fighters spar against some of my fighters so that they could both get better. Our primary focus is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's our main thing. We are going to have some bags. We do have some bags, but that's more if they want to go in, they kick the bag for a couple minutes before class starts. But our main focus is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and boxing. I know they do Muay Thai, but that's not really what we really emphasize. And as you can see, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is our background. We're very well known in the world of Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu is a very small community. As a competition team, we're 6-time national champs. Our children are doing great. You guys are more than welcome to go. July, we're competing at APU, and we're expecting to have a good turnout and represent the city of West Covina to the highest. So that's it. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you for coming back up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do we have any further questions of staff?
I
Commissioner
have a
Reynolds.
question of staff. On condition H, just as a procedural thing, it talks about this approval does not include approval of signs. A separate sign permit shall be obtained prior to installation of signs. The signs are up. So what happens now?
To answer that question, Commissioner Reynolds, even though the condition indicates that signs need to be, essentially it's just a catch-all that a permit needs to be taken. And essentially, the applicant did pull permits. There isn't a requirement that the AUP be approved prior to getting approval for signage, but essentially, there was a permit pulled for the signage.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff?
If I might, if there's no other questions, I think Commissioner Jimenez did ask about condition F, and I think after considering and listening to all the input, I think it would be wise to change that because of the wording is very specific. And I think there's a couple different ways, if you're interested in approving it, there's a couple different ways it could be worded. It seems to me, and Renee, please interrupt me if I'm saying this wrong, but it seems to me they're proposing to be operating from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., but with a big break in the middle. So one way it could be done is just allow them to operate from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. 5 days a week, and then from 10 to 2 on Saturday, which is what we originally had. Another way to do it would be to break it. I think I'd give them a little bit of flexibility in the morning, maybe 6 to 9 a.m., and then from 4 to 9 p.m., something like that. So either way, I think we're comfortable. And then with the Saturday hours they originally proposed, 10 to 2. So that would be our suggestion. We'd be happy to have any discussion if the commission wanted to try to craft something out of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm
Commissioner Reynolds.
fine without just allowing them to operate straight through, without designating a break.
I agree. I think,
Yeah,
6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
exactly.
I think that would simplify it, and I doubt we'll have much activity in that middle of the day hour anyway.
But if they decided to add an additional, class or something, I mean, they could do it.
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to be going out there with a watch, oh, it's 2 o'clock, so.
No, I don't think
They may spar with you if you do that.
And I'll lose, too. No problem.
I think a good suggestion. That'll keep it simple.
Same here.
Okay. Any more comments? I'd like to make a few comments. I think that the parking concern is certainly a valid one. I think that there may be something to look at as to whether or not others who are unrelated to those properties are using that. That may be something to look into. Sounds like you're already on that with a survey. I also heard that you're willing to ask your potential clientele to work with your neighbors and make it all work out. And I also think that there may be potential opportunities for joint ventures, maybe not legit joint ventures, but helping each other out in some way, shape, or form. So I think that if the parking situation could be worked out, and I think that there should be, because I think the alternative would be to assume that they can't have any parking, and I don't think that's fair. I think this, at least from my perspective, could be worked out. And as we mentioned with what Commissioner Redholt suggested for the time, I think I'm comfortable with moving forward with that time and what's already been discussed with looking into parking solutions. So Commissioner Jimenez?
I think, just to continue a little bit about the parking, the one issue we really haven't talked about is really the success of the norm site. To me personally, they tend to generate a lot of traffic, which doesn't necessarily contain itself to the perimeter of the norms, I guess, designated area. There's some spillover effect that you get along by the Aim Higher facility, and you see that, I think, a lot in the evening hours, sometimes maybe that late hour when you get somewhat of a crowd at the norms. So I think that also leads to maybe the crowding of the parking. But if anything, if there is a use of parking, it probably is because of the success of the shopping center, the coexistence of all the existing uses, and then adding a new one to the property. Obviously, that means that shopping center obviously is somewhat healthy.
Right.
So I think that's what I would like to see, is a healthy shopping center and uses hopefully that can coexist together. And hopefully it doesn't sound like there's much of a conflict, considering the disciplines in the MMA field are somewhat distinct between the two operators. So that's it
I
for
agree,
me.
good points. Commissioner Redholz?
Yeah, let me just make my comments. I think that both of the businesses can coexist, and I think you could probably even help each other down the line. As far as the parking goes, all we can do as a commission is look at the fact that it meets parking. I mean, who's using the spaces? That's something you guys has to be figured out. But it does meet the parking requirements as far as we're concerned. So, you know, and as Commissioner Jimenez said, I mean, it's a successful center, so that's good, you know. I do consider this a slap on the wrist. I'm concerned that you operated in advance of, you know, getting approvals. That kind of thing concerns me. You know, you happen to be a nice guy, you brought some nice people with you, and I think you're gonna do well and all that, but your wrist has been slapped, okay? So, understood, right? Okay. So, you know, I'm looking forward to, you know, you guys working together. You seem to be, you know, in a similar business, but like I say, I think you can help each other out. And I look forward to both of you continuing to be successful in being a part of the West Covina business community. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further comments? Well, before I make a motion, I will add a little more to what you had to say. I think the time to be worried is when parking's not a problem. So hopefully we can find ways to mitigate the parking issue. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve with the changes we made to the time. What was that, H? In the conditions?
F. And then I would, the resolution number would be 175864.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll second. We got a first and a second, and roll call, please.
Commissioner Hing? Aye. Commissioner Holtz?
Aye.
Commissioner Jimenez?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz?
Aye.
Chairman Castellanos?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0, and this action is final unless appealed to City Council within 10 days. Thank you all, and we wish you the best. And that will conclude our public hearings, one item. We'll move on to non-hearing items. Who's hiding down there? Now's the time to pop up. Okay, so item number 3, fiscal year 2017-2018 capital improvement program filing of conformance with general plan, general exemption. And this will be presented by Planning Director Jeff Anderson.
I'll present it, and we have Miguel Hernandez here from Public Works, and you can see the amount of interest there is in Public Works Department items. Every year, as part of the budget, we adopt what's called a capital improvement program, a CIP. And as Government Code of California states that when you adopt that, you're supposed to, it does have its improvements to the community, and it's supposed to declare that it's conforming with your general plan. So that's why it's before you tonight. We're preparing this capital improvement program for the budget, which we are planning and hopeful that will be adopted in June. So that's why the staff report's here in front of you. You have the lists of projects on page 1 of the staff report. We have provided you some analysis and policies in action in the brand new general plan. So we had to work really hard at this because we had to read our general plan to make sure we've got the right policies and actions. So that's on page 2. And then there's a resolution that's attached. And on the last page, last 2 pages, Exhibit A is the list again that you'd be declaring to be consistent with the general plan. So we're looking for a motion in a second. And we do have Miguel here to answer any questions on the capital improvement projects themselves, if you had any, and we can answer questions on the general plan or anything in that regard. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. I do have a question for Miguel. One of the bullet points towards the bottom, it says installation of traffic control devices. Are those, what are those, Miguel?
Throughout the year, we have issues like maybe there's a crosswalk, we have issues with stop signs, and the traffic committee has the means to make those improvements, striping, just for safety purposes.
Okay, does that cover things like, say, if like one of the parking street crossing buttons goes down, or if like a street light goes down, does that cover those, or would that be different?
That would also cover that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It caught my attention because it's fixed now, but last week, the one exiting the Craft Hill parking lot was down for about 3 days. So, but it's fixed now.
It's fixed,
So,
good.
yeah. So, do we have any more Commissioner Redholz?
Yeah, as long as Miguel's here, installation of flashing beacons. Where do we have, I know there's one by Edgewood. Do we have more? Are we looking to install more throughout the city, or?
Well, these are a little different. Right now, we have 7-8 locations of embedded lights in the asphalt, and they're really a maintenance headache. So what we're planning on doing is replacing them what they call with an RRFB, which is rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which are beacons that are above ground and they flash when the button's pressed for pedestrians. That's the intent for this one.
There's locations already earmarked for that?
There's a couple locations that the embedded lights don't work, like Cameron at Cameron School.
Okay.
And there's also probably, I think it's on Willow and Ferncroft.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. Any more questions of Miguel? Commissioner Hang.
Actually, I just have a quick question regarding the list. How does it come about? I mean, new projects for this coming year.
Well, it starts back in January. All the departments submit requests to the Public Works, and then they're vetted through the different department heads, and then we figure out how much money we have, and then we pick the priority projects, and that could be funded.
Okay, so this list basically come from each department, not necessarily from the residents?
Sometimes the departments get requests from residents, and they're put on the list.
Okay, thank you.
And just like you know, most of these are all restricted funds. There is no general fund on this list.
I'm sorry, repeat that again?
There is no general fund money on the list.
So we don't usually talk about financing here, but there's different types of financing. There are Proposition C.
We have Prop C, Prop A, CBDG funds.
So those are just names, but they're funding that comes from various sources, some from state, some from federal, some from propositions that have happened. But you have to use them for a certain thing. You don't have flexibility to how to use them. General fund you can use however you want, and that's usually what comes in with our property taxes and sales taxes.
So what he's saying is not from the general fund, it's from
Exactly.
other?
Yeah, it's stuff that has to be used for transportation or those kind of things, or well, mainly it's transportation, but there's some
Mainly
other
transportation, yes.
And it's use it or lose it, right?
In most cases, yes.
I do have one other question I remembered. I noticed the first bullet point is fire station floor improvements. I recall a conversation where, I don't remember which fire station it was, but I can't find out if there's anything that can be addressed. But I did overhear firefighters talking about one of the countertops, I believe in one of the kitchens, being half finished and there being a desire for it to be completed. So I don't know if this would fall under these funds or if that's possible for next time. But if you could just let me know, I could find out more details later.
Right. Right now, what we're doing is we're taking like each station and trying to improve them. We've done 2 stations so far. We remodeled their restrooms and their showers. And we've done floors on 3 of the fire stations. And this one's for flooring on another station.
Okay, cool. Well, I figured I'd bring it up since we have a chance now. Thank you, Miguel.
Okay.
Any more questions? Seeing none.
There is a resolution. That resolution number would be 17-5865.
17-5865. And I
I'll
don't
move
think
the item
anybody's
forward.
hiding out there. What's that?
I'll move the item.
Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. We've got a motion.
Second.
We've got a second, and since nobody's out there, I didn't bring anyone up to speak. I know, I always wonder if someone is hiding down there. Can we have roll call, please, Jeff?
Yes, Commissioner Hing?
Aye.
Commissioner Holtz? Aye. Commissioner Jimenez?
Yes.
Commissioner Redholz? Aye. Chairman Castellanos?
Yes. The motion passes 5-0, and this one I don't think is appealable, right, Jeff? Okay. Thank you, Miguel. We'll see you next time. And moving on to item number 4, we've got a study session. And will you be presenting this in its entirety, Jeff?
I will be.
right.
We do have Ivy Side from the City Attorney's Office here to correct me if I say anything wrong, but this is Code Amendment 1405, which the Planning Commission, actually initiated several years ago in September of 2014 at the request of staff, because we knew there was some technical entitlement processing issues that we needed to address at the time. And this is a long time ago now, 2.5 years ago. And since that time, we've developed a longer list. So we're down to 13 items that we see need to be addressed. And so that's what I want to kind of introduce you to tonight. This is the first study session for this code amendment, and there's likely to be at least one more and maybe a couple more. Again, this is initiated at the request of staff. These are technical issues with the municipal code that should be addressed. Issues have been noted by staff for some time, are raised when the new city attorney's office was hired. Others have come up since that time. The entitlement processing is what that means is the means by which applications are submitted to the city, reviewed, and approved. So what we just did with the administrative use permit was entitlement processing, and the processes around what we do and what the commission has to do to approve those are what are the steps that we're talking about when I talk about entitlement processing. The city has a variety of entitlement processes, as you're all aware, some requiring staff review, some requiring staff committee review, some requiring subcommittee review, subcommittee of the Planning Commission, which I know you're aware of that, Planning Commission review, and others require City Council review. So there's a variety of steps that a variety of applications have to go through. This is an inclusive subject that includes all types of processed entitlements required by the zoning code, such as precise plans, conditional use permits, administrative use permits, tract maps, variances. Over the past few years, staff has compiled the list, processes and standards that should be evaluated to determine if current standards are appropriate. Cities have the discretion to establish review processes that are acceptable for most types of uses, not for every type of use. There's some things that are established by state law, and we have to follow that. But there's other uses, like conditional use permits, that we have a lot of flexibility on how we process and why we make a decision. Since the West Covina Municipal Code was established in its current form, which was in 1977, a really good year, but it's kind of a past us. It's hard to see in the rearview mirror at this point in time. Harder for some of us than others, like Renee here. He can't see it. Some sections of the code have been amended while other sections have not changed. So we have some sections of the code that almost in their entirety are still what was adopted in 1977, which is not the best situation. The city is contemplating a comprehensive zoning code update, but as those of you who were here last night at our budget study session are familiar with what's going on, that may be a challenge to do in the current economic conditions that the city's in, but I think it really needs to be done from someone who's been working with this code for 17 years. And even if we can go forward, that usually takes several years to go through, and these are things we should address now. Some of them we should have addressed in 2014, so we're already behind the bubble. While most of the affected sections are in the zoning section of the municipal code, which is what this commission generally deals with, that's chapter 26 of the municipal code. There are some sections that are in the subdivision code that you also deal with, and we don't modify. That's one of the code sections that hasn't hardly been touched since 1977. So we haven't updated that as the years have gone by, and there's some things in there that really need to be addressed and included. So that's by way of introduction. Again, there's 13. I'm going to use my auctioneer voice here and try to go as quick as I can, because this can get a little dry, and I think this would be one of those, if Dave Stewart was here, he'd probably be leaving about now. So But I want you, and my main purpose for this discussion is to inform you. It's not necessarily to get, a lot of times we do these study sessions and my purpose is to get information out of you. At this point in time, except for this first item, this is different. 2 through 13 are all about information, telling you, we're going to be telling you what we think you should do. We should do, the city should do as a team. We're not going to be asking you questions about which one you think we should do. We're going to be telling you what we think we should do. And as we move past that into the next study session, there may be some other questions that we want to ask you. But this is the first step, and we want to just introduce these issues. So the first one is one that has come up over the last really couple of months and maybe the last year, especially as we reviewed our downtown plan. Establish height limits in non-residential zones and in the multifamily zone. The code does not have height limits for non-residential or multi-residential zones except within 100 feet of single-family zones. The downtown code establishes a height limit of 3 stories or 40 feet in most of the peripheral areas and 5 stories and 70 feet in the central area, the plaza area near the freeway. That's the height limit in downtown. And keep in mind that I think as we discussed the downtown, we're trying to encourage growth in the downtown. So that's our growth area. That's where we want the growth to occur. And yet we've set a height limit. The rest of the city we don't have a height limit on. And we've talked about protecting those areas. So I think we've got a logic issue as we move forward. Option 1 would then be make no changes and leave it alone. And option 2 is to establish a limit and continue the existing height limits with proximity to the single-family zone. So even if we establish a height limit, I think we want to continue those height limits within close proximity to single-family zone. Staff will be recommending that we analyze and evaluate with the Planning Commission's help and then City Council, establishing some type of height limit. And it may not just be one height limit, it may depend on the zone. You can have different height limits for different zones. Most commercial and multifamily properties are very close to single-family properties. If we got a zoning map out here, you'd see that. Our commercial zones are tentacles that go in between single-family neighborhoods. So we had dealt with someone who was interested in building a multi-story building and noted that we were afraid it might have some effect on single-family properties, even though it wasn't adjacent. It was not adjacent to single-family properties, but it was a proposed like 10-story building. So we had them do a shadow analysis, and sure enough, especially in the winter, there was a lot of effect on neighboring single-family properties. So these are the reasons that we're bringing it up. To go further, this is be the first peel of the onion. We would ask you if you're in agreement with option 2. If you are, we have some other things we're going to have to bring back. We're going to do some evaluation, zones, distances, heights that we would suggest, and bring those back to you, and then have a further discussion on this. This is something we do need to work with you as a team to come up with what the commission thinks is the best thing to recommend to the City Council. So at this point in time, I'll just pause and ask if there's any questions on that or what the commission's desire is on that particular item.
Well, I like option 2, that recommendation, but go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, I was just going to say,
What are your thoughts?
just to get the ball rolling, I'm for option 2, just to start the discussion of it and, go forward and see how we want to handle it. I definitely don't want to leave it, I definitely don't want option 1.
Okay, all right.
Agreed. Any other comments or ideas?
I actually, I guess with option 2, if we were to set a height limit, let's say 2 stories or 3 stories, then all of a sudden the developer will all come in and have 2 stories all around that area or 3 stories all around that area, versus there's no really, you could say, creative or design options. Because people would look at the code and say, okay, you know what, this area is going to be 3-story, and that's what we're going to target. So I don't know if we were to set that limit, if that encouraged that type of option, versus we don't get a design variations throughout time. So it can become problematic in the future. We would have boxy design, because anyone who wants to come and develop, they look at it, they say, you know what, this area is 3-story, let's just do that, and that's done. Versus if we were to leave it open, then we can say, you know what, come with a good design for our city. We like to see what you can offer, what you can make out of it, which is profitable for them and also a nice and leave a building that lasts through time as well. So that's really, I don't want to be very limiting, because option 2 would be limiting, easy for us, basically, but also easy for them as well. But then at this end result, we don't get a nice design.
Commissioner
for
Heng,
the
sorry
city.
to interrupt.
Does that make
No,
sense?
but the option number 2 would be to suggest and bring back a study session to discuss those things, is what option 2 is. We're not setting it in stone right now. We're going to bring it back to be able to discuss all those sorts of things that you're recommending.
Well-
Whereas, right?
Well, I mean, I understand that, but at
Okay.
the same time, it's like, if we're set on option 2 and we're not looking at other options, that's just like pretty much setting in that path.
No, option
Going
2
that
is to look at the options that we would like to discuss, whereas option 1 means no height limit at all right now, so they could
Well,
come in.
that's what I'm trying to say. If we don't have a height limit, it gives them design creativity for the future as well, versus if we lock in ourselves saying that, okay, we should have 3-story or 2-story, then we're locking that in as well for us in the future.
Right,
So all design
agreed.
will be coming in with 2 or 3 stories.
No, but we
versus-
could say, when we bring it back to discuss, we could say 5, 6, 7. Right now, they could come in and suggest 10 or 12, 15, 20, without any kind of limitation, right?
That's correct.
So that's what we're faced with. They could come in and say 30, 50. And
Well, the general code that we just passed recently also had a type of form for building in each zoning code as well.
it was in the
For the
downtown.
downtown
Only the
area.
downtown. We didn't, that's what I'm saying. We didn't address anything else in the city with the downtown plan or the general plan. And yes, I think Commissioner or Chairman Castellanos is stating what option 2 would be, to bring information back to talk about that. And I'm not sure.
Well, I just
Well,
don't
I-
want to leave option 1 out, versus if we were just talking about option 2, that would be encouraging the limitations of heights.
Yes, it
Then
would
not-
be encouraging the limitation, but I didn't say 2 or 3 stories. We would probably be talking 3 to 5 or maybe more stories. That's probably what we're talking about. We're talking about office buildings. We're not talking about shopping centers. So yeah, so we're not talking about 2 or 3 stories. I guess I want to make that clear.
Well,
seems
I
like you're
understand
assuming-
that. I'm just giving that as an example.
example.
I'm not necessarily locking in, it could be 10-story, but if you have a building that looks 10-story, it's very boxy all around, versus if you give them a flexibility, they can come up with better designs. Maybe certain section could be 2, 3 stories, and certain section could be 10 stories.
Well,
I'm
and
just
you're
an
talking
example.
about design review, which would certainly be addressed regardless, right?
That's correct.
But actually, I
But
think
at that
that,
point in time, if we set the code to a certain standards, that's how they would read it, and that's how they would come up and say, hey, if this is a 10-story area, we're going to build a 10-story building all
sure,
around.
but the design, they would still have to comply with the design regardless of height. They would still have to comply with your concern. But actually, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. I believe that option 2 is actually inclusive of option 1, because after we discuss it, we can come to the conclusion that option 1 was sufficient to begin with. So it's not excluding option 1 to address your concern, if that helps. Is that correct, Jeff?
That is correct. And whatever the planning commission came up with, the city council might say, no, we think that the code is fine now. So it's more about studying it, and I do agree that you want to give some freedom for design, but I also, please understand that when somebody comes to the counter and asks us how many stories can we build, we don't have an answer right now. So people can go, the one I'm mentioning, I think came in at either 3 or 5 stories, and then the next time they came in, they were at 10. And I had no way of responding either way. And it was affecting single-family neighbors. So you have a negative effect on the neighborhood when you do that, and I don't have a way to tell them not to do that. So that's the problem I'm having. I want to have flexibility too, but we also want to give good direction to the development community so they don't waste their time and money designing something that you guys are going to deny, or that the city council is going to deny. So that's the idea here. I don't want, we're not trying to pre-establish what height it's going to be, and it could be different heights. There are areas in the city that probably might be able to build a 10 or 15-story building that wouldn't affect single family. But I can tell you those are very small. If we talk about streets where a development is likely to occur in the next 20 years, as North Azusa, Glendora Avenue, Sunset, there isn't anywhere you're going to build on those that you're not going to, a tall building that you're not going to have some problem with a shadow effect on the single-family properties nearby. So that's the reason for the discussion. But we can go a long way and make this very complicated so that you can allow flexibility on those places. Or we can make it very simple and just say 5-story height limit. In anywhere in between, but we have to bring a map to you and we have to provide you that discussion before we can have a real discussion. So I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Hing, and you may not be in favor of it, and that's fine. I guess I'm just looking for direction from the commission as a whole where we want to go next.
Thank you, and I do agree with you too. I just wanted you to also know that we're not completely eliminating option 1 from the table. We can come back and discuss whatever it is that we need to discuss, you know, so. Okay, so, well, with that being said, are you a little more?
If I was a
go ahead.
developer, I would like to know some ramifications of what I'm going to be allowed to do. Otherwise, like you say, you go through a big expense and all that and say, no way. So it's just kind of giving them some kind of an idea what they can do. So option 2, I think, is great.
Okay, we will work towards a study session to start that discussion. Like I said, I don't think this is going to happen in one study session. It's going to be a step progression. Okay, that was probably the most difficult one. As we move forward here, there's not options. These are just recommendations because these are things that, in our understanding and also in communication with the City Attorney's Office, these things need to be done. Or I shouldn't say need to be done. Some of them need to be done. Some of them it seems appropriate to be done. And this is one, I'm not even sure the Commission is aware of this, but we have a process called slight modification, which is basically a minor variance. Code establishes a review board. So this review board is comprised of the city planner, building official, and public services director. We only have one of those positions now in the city. So that's one of the oddities about it. But the city planner is basically the planning director, building official, and the public services director are basically the public works director. They review slight modifications. This is the only responsibility that board has. 2 of the 3 board members are public works members who are generally not used to reviewing these type of applications. So they usually kind of just defer to the planning director, and so the planning director ends up sort of leading the charge, and that's not very different than an administrative use permit, right? So a slight modification is a minor variance for a 20% reduction to heights and setbacks. It does require, it's a staff review at the board, and it requires a 300-foot notification and a hearing before the review board. So our suggestion would be to change that process to an AUP. Just eliminate that review board, stop bothering Public Works Department officials to come over and set at a review board, and place the responsibility with the planning department, and any requests for hearings would come to the Planning Commission as they actually would now through the slight modification process we have in place. And that, I think, would make it simpler for everyone. So unless there's, I'll just move on unless anybody raises their hand and wants to make any comment on that. Okay. Number 3, revise planning director modifications to minor site plan review and minor modification. The municipal code currently provides a brief statement about a planning director's ability to make minor modifications to an approved application or development. That's all. That's about, what I just read is about the amount of information in the code on a planning director's modification. There's no criteria, there's no process, there's no findings, there's no statement of conditions of approval, none of that. The code doesn't specify any of that. We are suggesting we amend the code to provide a process and a criteria, modify the title by changing the terminology to minor site plan review for small significant changes and minor modifications for minor insignificant changes. The current title has led to confusion on the review. People think they just need to meet with the planning director and you can get approval, or they have to talk the planning director into something. And so this will reduce the confusion, and it also is more descriptive of what's going on. And lastly, while it's not here, it's what we did in the downtown plan. So we adopted these standards in the downtown plan with a hope that we could follow with the plan. So everybody understand that? And we'll go to number 4. Eliminate AUP application when concurrent with the CUP. All right, so that's a large home. Let me say it differently. The code establishes discretionary review thresholds that define when an application must be submitted to add to a single-family house. You guys think you're all familiar with this. These include large additions, maximum unit size exceptions, large homes, and then second-story additions. All those are different, right? So what we find sometimes is that we have a large home application that also includes a second-story application, and sometimes it's a large addition. So they're both together. So now we're bringing a conditional use permit and an administrative use permit to you, which basically have the same findings, and there's the same review process, and we have the same conditions, but we have to make 2 resos, and you have to take 2 votes. So we're suggesting when an AUP and a CUP is required, all reviews should be done through the CUP, and this will reduce the number of resolutions that must be prepared, and it would mainly affect, maybe exclusively, but mainly it would affect single-family house things. We would have loved to have had that for Van Dale and for Taylor Morrison, and Ron would love to have had it for the one that's coming up in June, but we're too far behind. But if everyone's good with that, that one's an easy one to understand. All right, number 5, subcommittee review for CUPs for large homes. This has been something we've sort of instituted, but the code isn't specific on it. The subcommittee is comprised of 2 planning commission members. They're tasked to review single-family home modifications. Generally, when an AUP is forwarded to the planning commission, the subcommittee forwards their review as well. Large home CUPs are always reviewed by the planning commission. So the subcommittee standards in the code don't give leeway for that. So technically, a CUP, even though it's coming to the full planning commission, needs to go to subcommittee. And the subcommittee members are a little bit, they're a little bit not wanting to review that because they know it's going to come before them. Now they're going to have to review it twice. And they won't have the ability to hear the other 3 people's opinions, which might sway their judgment on certain situations. So staff would be suggesting eliminating the subcommittee review for requirement for CUPs for large homes, and I'll leave it at that. All right, number 6, establish findings for tentative parcel maps and tentative tract maps. We do resolutions for tract maps and parcel maps all the time. I don't know where the findings came from. We have been consistent in using the same ones, but they're not in the municipal code. So we're suggesting that we establish findings for tentative tract map and parcel maps. Findings used to make decisions on projects should be listed and provided in the code so they're consistent and they not change in a case-by-case basis. So if everyone's good with that, I don't know yet if we'll be suggesting the findings we're using now or if we'll have other findings. We'll probably work with the city attorney's office to come up with the findings we think are most appropriate given the situation right now. Okay, number 7, establish standards for extension of tentative parcel maps and tract maps. Discretionary applications approved by the Planning Commission can be extended for 3 one-year time periods. They're approved for 1 year and they can be extended for 3. There are no standards in the code for extending tentative parcel and tract maps. However, state law does require that tentative maps have a 2-year period before they expire. So we've always just followed state law, which is 2 years and then 3 one-year extensions. We're suggesting maybe at this point we establish the extension standards in the code, exactly like we have them now, 2 years and then 3 one-year extensions. Everybody understand that? That's correct. And we wouldn't be changing that. We'd be establishing it in the code so it's clear and gives staff and everyone direction to know we're all on the same page. Number 8. This is something we have talked about sometimes. I think I've talked individually with some people. Modify expiration for case files from 1 year to 2 years. So discretionary applications approved by the Planning Commission are valid for a 1-year period unless extension request is submitted. And then there's 3 years, 3 one-year extensions. Many of these applications are for larger projects that may take longer than a year to complete plan check and grading. Expiration standards were originally adopted to establish a limit on when projects can be constructed as council policy and philosophy changes from time to time. So that's the reason you have a time frame. I think the question is, are we comfortable still with the 1 year or should we go to 2? And I would accept some thought on this because I think if the Planning Commission is happy with what it is now, there's no use to look at this. But we're suggesting to change the expiration from 1 year to 2 years. That would reduce the number of extensions that are requested. In conjunction, the number of discretionary extensions could be reduced from 3 to 2. So if you were concerned about going from a 4-year total to 5-year, you could change it from 1 year, 3 1 years to 2 years and 2 1 years. So those are options. And again, I'll pause there because I would like to hear if we don't have to come up with that answer tonight, but the real question is, do you want to go from a 1 year to a 2 year or not? Oh, I shouldn't say, do you want to consider going to from a 1 year to a 2 year or not?
I would also.
I would suggest too, with a 1 year extension, and then in the 4th year, maybe come back to us.
Oh, 1 year staff extension. Okay, we can talk about
I mean,
those.
that would be my thought. So 2 years to go through the permitting process, possibly a 3rd year because of financing mechanisms or whatnot. But at year 4, you know, what's holding you up at year 4 now? Because at that point, I think a project starts to lose money, or are we just holding on to some hope that the project will move forward? My thought process is maybe requiring that, because that would be year 4, to come back to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if that is their lot, we can't really do anything anyway, per se. If let's say if the land belongs to them, whether they, by year 4, whether they wanted to build what was approved or not, it's still up to their decisions.
Well,
So even if you don't give them that, like, let's say year 4th that they want to come in and, okay, I'm ready to build and start this project that I started 3-4 years ago, then they may not have that option because the land may still belong to them. Does it make sense?
yes, but I think maybe that, the point is they have not started construction. If they've started
Correct.
construction, they don't need to come back at all.
Correct.
So the issue is, let me be clear what you do now. Right now, if they get a precise plan approved, they get 1 year. If they don't get a permit, it comes back to the commission. It's a discretionary application. The commission can deny it. And the commission has denied cases in the past to not extend them. They don't get an automatic 4 years. They get an automatic 1 year. Everything else is discretionary and up to the commission and or the city council whether they want to extend that. Now, I would say that over my time here, I could count on my hand the number of times that it hasn't been extended, but the commission council have exercised that option of not extending things because of philosophy changes on the council or other reasons. So that's what it is now. So we wouldn't be taking away anyone's right. Actually, by extending it to 2 years, we're actually giving them more rights. We're giving them more ability. We're giving them a year extra that they have the option and that we don't have the option to take it away from them.
I think it's better to give them more time.
Okay. All right, so we will look into that. That's number 8. Number 9, establish modification procedures for tentative parcel maps and tract maps. Currently, there's no planning director's modification ability provided in the subdivision section of the municipal code. There may be times when minor modifications to an approved tract map or parcel map are appropriate. So we're suggesting that we amend the code to provide the process and criteria exactly like we were talking about with the minor site plan review and minor modifications in the zoning section. So this would be in the subdivision section of the code. That's why we need to do it in both places. 2 completely different chapters of the code. Comfortable with that? All right, number 10. Hopefully this one makes sense. If not, maybe I might turn it over to Ivy to explain something that makes sense. City council review for cases concurrent with case that requires commission approval. Okay, that's a mouthful. I couldn't think of another way to say this. The code establishes that certain cases are approved by the planning commission. The planning commission has authority to approve precise plans, CUPs, and variances. It doesn't have to go to council. And others are approved by the council. Council has authority. General plan amendments, zone changes, code amendments. You don't approve those, you make a recommendation. When a precise plan is concurrently processed with something like a zone change, the code does not expressly make a distinction and allows the precise plan to be approved by the planning commission and then only the zone change to go to council. And so that process, we're suggesting that that not be the case. When there's a concurrent processing under the authority of the planning commission and another one under the authority of the city council, that the whole approval go to city council. This makes for a more transparent and less confusing process. City attorneys recommended that we do this. Actually, we've been doing this since our city attorney firm was hired. We have been doing this because it's a better policy. It makes for less confusion because if the city council wants to deny a zone change on something that the planning commission has approved a precise plan on, then the planning commission's approval still stands, right? Because they don't have the precise plan in front of them. So it just leads to a lot of confusion, and it has. At the time I've been here, it's led to a lot of, there's also the appeal process thing. If you have the authority to approve a precise plan, and there's a 10-day appeal period, how long do we need to wait to schedule the zone change and the general plan amendment at city council? Because there has to be an ability for someone to appeal that. So, these are things that we've actually dealt with on a basis, and it got to the point of ridiculousness. I think that one of the things that I appreciate the city attorney bringing that up when we hired them and actually instituting it. So I think that it's wise to do that. Am I clear on what I'm talking about there? Okay, you comfortable with that? All right. 11 split votes by city council on appeals. This doesn't happen, but can. This hasn't happened very often. I'm not sure if I ever remember it happening, but it certainly could happen. In some discretionary cases, the planning commission makes a decision and the decision is appealed to the city council. We had a case like that, just went to city council in March, right? At South Hills Shopping Center. When the appeal is heard by council, there may be times when there are only 4 council members hearing the appeal. And that would be because of there's probably several reasons why it would happen. The most likely is somebody's conflicted and they can't vote. But other things can happen, sickness, injury, someone could move out of town and you have an empty seat on council. Someone could step down, that has happened in the recent past, and you had an empty seat on council. So there are reasons why that might happen, although it's usually few and far between. So the recommendation is to modify the code to state that in a case of a city council deadlock on an appeal, a 2-2 vote, that the decision of the planning commission stands. This would allow a decision to stand instead of a non-decision, because a 2-2 vote is a non-decision. There's no decision, there's no ordinance, or there's no resolution that's adopted, there's no findings that are made, it's a non-decision. Again, this was suggested by the city attorney's office.
If the council's okay with that, I think that's a good.
What matters is we're okay with it. That's what counts.
Right. So the current zoning code is silent on this topic?
We've been researching this of late, and yes, we haven't found any evidence. Again, a lot of these sections go back to 1977. It hasn't been, I think this is one of those sections.
But if it's a non-decision, can it be assumed like there's no decision made, so therefore it's not
So we
moving forward?
We would recommend that we take the assumption out of it and just state it affirmatively in the code, so there's no guesswork.
Well, I think the final decision should goes to council people are voted for, so they should make the last stand.
Well, they should, but
Because they were representing the people.
there may be times that they cannot. That's the point.
So this would be if there's a deadlock 2-2 vote at council, but, this
But
proposed.
if it's a deadlock, then it can't be assumed that it's not a go.
Well, right, so we don't want to have that hanging, we want to have that stated affirmatively in the code. And so this proposed change would go before a city council anyway, and they will approve this code amendment or not, if it moves forward.
Okay. No, I'm just saying that, I guess I'm just trying to say that even if it's a deadlock, it's only at one meeting. They can catch up in the second meeting and make up that.
If there's a
No?
vacancy, or if somebody's conflicted out, you'll only have 4.
I understand that.
We've had several times when it's gone quite a while. So that, you're just sitting there, nothing's going to happen. So
I'm
I
just
think
saying
this
that,
is good.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that council members are being voted by the people and they should have the last say, instead of coming back to.
And we understand that, but if somebody's conflicted out, they're conflicted out.
It's not so much that it would come back, it's that this body will have made a decision, and if it moves up to council review in some way and council is deadlocked, it just makes it clear that because council took no action, the decision of this body stands. It's not like it's going to be redecided by this body.
Or they do take an action, but because of the deadlock vote, the previous decision is not vacated, it's upheld, right? So they can vote, those that are not conflicted out, it means that there's a deadlock. The previous decision stands. So I guess technically a council member can still vote, but as long as they're not conflicted out.
Right, so they do take action, but then there's no, it's considered a non-decision because they deadlock.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, it could be 4-0, it could be 3-1, but they are the elected officials. If they decide that there's 2-2, then there is a remedy here, right?
Because otherwise they would have to wait until, well, which might
If somebody's conflicted out, there is no waiting.
Right, it would have to be until there's a change. Another election.
And under that scenario, if someone is conflicted out, let's just say they were sick, there's a higher probability they may not be allowed to participate as part of any subsequent hearing because they were not part of the first hearing in some weird scenario like that.
If somebody, for example, is conflicted out, they have a conflict, they would not be allowed to participate in any future hearing of that item.
But even if they were sick, right, yeah, I'm sorry. So like if a council member was sick for whatever reason, that was the conflict. There's a higher probability, or I'm sorry, I apologize. For whatever reason, he's not he's sick, so he can't come in that particular day. That person may not be allowed, that council member may not be necessarily allowed to hear the topic if it's continued. Maybe I'm just mucking up the thing.
I hear what you're saying, and I think we are, you never know what's going to come up.
Right. But point is that whoever's here to vote can vote, and it's just clarifying something that is probably a practice at the moment.
Right, so that, again, it's not an assumption that needs to be made. It is clear in the code what that means.
Okay. Good, are we good?
I'm good.
Good with that? I think we're good with that. So just to recap, it's kind of like a shootout in soccer when you tie, except it's not a shootout, right?
No, there you have to keep going until someone actually gets
That's
one
right.
more.
Okay, bad
right, in a
analogy.
shootout.
Anyway, we can continue.
In World Cup soccer, yes, actually, right, in World Cup competition.
Yeah. It's the golden goal. What was I on? Okay, so number 12, City Council member appeal process. The code establishes an appeal process for commission decisions. The code would treat council members like members of the public, requiring an appeal letter and a fee to be paid to ask a planning commission decision to be forwarded to the city council. So the idea here is to establish an appeal process that allows a council member to request an item to be reviewed. I've got that written wrong. It's request an item that has been reviewed by the planning commission to be reviewed by city council.
So currently, hasn't council members in the past appealed decisions?
I recall something coming up with that, but I think instead of changing the code, they developed a policy. And the code is always better than a policy.
So it's not codified?
Right.
Oh.
At least we haven't found it. We've been looking for it. I've looked in several places in the code and I haven't found it.
I can't be specific, but I'm pretty sure it's happened where
I'm pretty sure it has too.
council members appealed.
But for this to occur correctly, it should be in the zoning code, and we didn't do it.
Yeah.
So it hadn't been done under my term here. So I think they adopted it as a policy.
Okay, so it'd be codified. If a council member decides to appeal our decision, they've got to go through the same process as a member of the public and pay for the appeal.
That's technically by the code, correct?
And could council member then sit in decision on that they appealed?
That becomes a good question. If they go through the process with the appeal, they might, because they have to put something.
They might be conflicted.
They have to put down something in writing that says why they're appealing it, and that may conflict them out. You're right.
So refer to the last one.
Yeah, go from 12 to 11.
Is the thought process that a singular council member can call this up or be that appeal or the appellate, I guess?
He wouldn't be the appellant, it wouldn't be an appeal, it would be a request for review. And I will communicate, we'll bring something back to you to tell you how that would work. I have discussed it with the city attorney's office, and there are cities that have this in. And it's not just about, you know, you make a phone call and you do it. There is a process that you have to go through.
So I think we used to call this a call for review. But it required that it go before the city council, and then it would require a vote amongst the council members. And it was, obviously, if the majority voted in favor,
Then it would go.
then it would be called up. Otherwise, the previous decision
Would stand.
Would stand.
There may be more than one way to do that, so we'll bring those, this is the kind of thing we need to have
So
further
it's
discussion on.
not an appeal.
It's not an appeal.
So they could call for a lot of reviews, couldn't they? I mean, couldn't they just go on to review that? Or,
They could.
But this would establish a procedure for that, so it's not willy-nilly.
And it's
okay.
not just
Yeah,
one
I mean,
person.
Yeah, I get that, but.
I think the idea is that not just one council member could just keep doing that. The rest of them would all have to agree to it.
So there would, oh, I see. So would they have to take a vote at the council to do that?
We'll have to figure, we'll have to
Okay,
flush
'cause
that
That
out.
kind of concerns me that, you're right, one person could really be.
Yeah, you could. And I think some of you go to council meetings, you know that they probably don't need any more on their plate right now, unless they want to be there in the next morning, you know, working on stuff. So if everyone's good with that, we will flush that out and provide you, this one will probably know that we may have to talk about some options. Well, we already had Miguel leave. He has the sewer information, so. Okay, the last one, review variance findings to determine appropriateness. Variances are established by state law, which includes required findings. So the state law and the government code has some required findings. It's probably, and so evaluation of the city's required findings would be appropriate to consider if revisions are warranted. So that's what we're suggesting, that you allow staff and the city attorney to look at the findings we are using right now and see if they are compliant with the government code and the state law. And that is it. The next step would be a second study session. I don't have a schedule for that right now. This is a fairly deep subject here that we're dealing with. There's a lot of issues and a lot of codes we have to go through, and a lot of authoring of code amendments when we get to that point. So this is going to take us some time to walk through. But I expect to have at least one more study session. As we develop that, we may be able to tell, when we come back with that, we'll be able to tell you if we need a further one after that. At the conclusion of those study sessions, we'll have a hearing for the Planning Commission. Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the City Council. We'll have a hearing for the City Council, and they'll discuss every single one of these issues that the Council recommends. So obviously the Planning Commission doesn't have the authority to change the code. Only the Council has the authority to change the code. So just wanted to close with that. Appreciate, we don't need a vote or anything. Appreciate all your input.
Thank you, Jeff. And just in case someone is hiding down there, continuation of oral communications. So we'll skip that and move on to commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous. Commissioner Edholz, please.
Yeah, I just want to run something by and get my fellow commissioners' opinion. And also, I don't even know if this falls under our purview, but I found out that in Arcadia, the Arcadia City Council adopted what they called an unoccupied residence registration ordinance. This was adopted last Friday. It establishes regulations and registration requirements for unoccupied residences in the city. I'll just kind of describe it. The purpose is to protect neighborhoods from the adverse effects of unoccupied residences that are not adequately maintained, and to be able to directly communicate with property owners or their designated agents when issues at their property occurs. It will allow the city, it will provide the city with a reliable contact when issues such as property maintenance or health and safety matters arise. And an unoccupied residence is a property that has not been occupied for at least 30 days. Houses that are under construction or in escrow to be sold or transferred or being actively marketed by a listing agent will not be considered unoccupied. As part of the registration requirement, the property owner will be required to register his or her contact information for at least 2 other authorized agents, with one contact being available on a 24-hour basis. So basically, and there's no fee to register an unoccupied residence. The property owners will be able to register at the city hall and so forth. But I'm just wondering if there's if there's something that the planning commission can take a look at as a study session. It seems like a good idea, to be able to establish a contact for homes, because there are homes that are just empty. And, maybe it's maybe more of a code enforcement issue. But I'm just, thinking it's something that maybe we could take a look at, I don't know if
I'd like to make a comment on it. I've got two houses right next to me, one behind me and one next to me. And the one has been unoccupied for 15 years. It's one of these hoarder houses where the stuff is floor to ceiling. It's in total disarray. The ceiling is caving in from the rain. It's totally termited. We know who the people are. And they keep breaking in there, and they keep taking people out at gunpoint. But the problem is, we know where the people live. And the other one is the big castle on top of Merced. They haven't lived there for 15 years. They live down in Balboa Island. But code enforcement tells me there's nothing they can really do about it. So even if they register, we know where the people are. Where we need to put the teeth in it is to be able to have code enforcement go in there and say, hey, this is a health hazard, and they say they can't do that. And that surprises me. So it's like I say, both these houses, we know who the people are. The one guy owns Sunset Medical Clinic. They're doctors and all that. And that's an 11,500 square foot house with 9-car garage, a big piece of property. And it's in disarray. I keep calling people about the pool being, mosquito infested and all that. But the house right behind me, that's one of those hoarder houses. And they say they can't do anything about it.
Let me just finish this one part here. The 24-hour contact must be local and able to respond to problems at the property within 1 hour of receiving a telephone notice. In lieu of the 2 authorized agents, the property owner may enlist a property management company that is located within 20 miles of the city and that can respond within 1 hour on a 24-hour basis.
Well, both these people live within 1 hour, but that doesn't still make it so they have to do anything. Okay, that's my big problem, my concern.
What I think we can do, because we don't know I think we'll say we don't know what you're talking about. So, but you're obviously reading something. You can forward that to me, and we can. What we might want to do first is sort of dissect that and provide you some information, and then maybe we do that sort of offline, and then we can talk about it or schedule it after you had the information and chance to look at it, what it does and what it requires, and if there's any funding that's part of that. But I think that is something we could definitely at least analyze.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, Herb. I really think it is. It's what I'm talking about is after the fact, But I do think we need to have some kind of contact.
So we can do that. I would suggest getting us the information, in whatever method we can get that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Redholz. You had that good idea. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else anyone would like to bring up? Nothing? Okay, we'll move on to Planning Director's report, please.
We have the forthcoming. We don't have any items for the 23rd, so you get the night off that night. We do have items for the 13th, at least right now it looks like we're going to have 3 hearings that night. So June 13th, and I would say that we will be doing rotation of officers that night. We're supposed to do it tonight, but didn't get put on the agenda, so we're going to be doing it on the 23rd. And that concludes, what did I say? June 13th. I keep saying the 23rd. And that's all I have to provide.
And any city council action?
The marijuana thing.
Yes, the marijuana. I can't remember the last. I did talk about the ADU, second unit, accessory dwelling units, I think, or did I not?
No, you didn't.
So a couple meetings ago, they approved the accessory dwelling unit code amendment. So basically, as the Planning Commission recommended it. So that will be going into place mid-June. They did review at the last Tuesday night. They reviewed the marijuana code amendment, marijuana regulations code amendment, and decided that they wanted to consider commercial cultivation, and so they sent it back to the Planning Commission for study of commercial cultivation standards. So I think it behooves the commission to consider standards, and if you have a concern about that, that's a perfect opportunity to provide the strictest standards that you think are appropriate. I think we will be working with the city attorney's office to come up with some standards that we think are appropriate. I don't have a date for a study session on that yet, but it'll be something that we will be working on in the not too distant future. Again, the idea is commercial cultivation only, not dispensaries. So that's the direction that was given. And that's all I have to report on City Council.
Well, thank you for that, and I thank you for giving me one more day as chairman. And thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, fellow commissioners. We are adjourned. And Lydia.